Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. If you could go into your Echo account and then click on today's assignment, it should be like Friday, something or another, and you need to make a copy of the slides. So if you could go ahead, log into Echo, make a copy of the slides, and then split screen between Zoom and the slides. And then if you could give me a thumbs up or, send me a chat and say, hey, I've got it, I'm done. So I know when to stop waiting. Awesome, thanks Maeve and Mackenzie and Cullen and Samira. Thanks, Nellie. Thanks, Josiah. Give y'all a couple more seconds. Make sure you have it up. Thanks, Fumi. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. If you're still pulling it up, you keep working on that and just listen to me in the background. So our first problem, I'm gonna go ahead and be honest with you. These problems are really hard. And my first class was like awesome. They were going back and forth with me in the chat. They were asking questions. They were thinking deeply. So I'm gonna encourage you because normally y'all are my best class. So I'm gonna expect the same or better from you guys. So the first one I'll kind of talk you through, and then the ones after that I'm gonna ask for your input in the chat just so I can see what you're thinking. I see people are already trying to solve it. Holy cow. I was right. Y'all are the best class I get every day. Okay, so we are going to start, and I'm going to kind of just briefly explain what's happening here. So you have like a blank, and this is what you need to fill in. And then it says times 10 equals 243. So something times 10 equals 243. Well, typically when we solve that kind of problem, we have to do the opposite. We have to go backwards to solve it. For example, if I had blank times 3 equals 12, I would find the inverse or the opposite. I would go and say, okay, 12 divided by 3 equals, and I know that's 4. So 4 would go on my blank there. So do you see how I had to flip that first problem backwards? And I had to use the opposite operation to figure it out. So that's basically what we're doing up here, except this time we're using we're using a power of 10, and our numbers are a little bit more challenging. So with the first one, we have a blank, times 10 equals 243. So to solve that, I would take 243, my answer there. I'm going to do the inverse operation, which would be to divide by 10. And then once I solve that, it's going to give me my answer. And I know in my head, whenever I divide by 10, I'm going back one place value. So you can draw, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw my place value chart. You might need a sheet of paper to help you solve some of these problems. So I'll give you some time here in a second to go grab a sheet of paper if you don't have it with you. But for now, I'm going to take 243 and I'm going to draw my place value right here. I don't know why I drew it like that. My bad, guys. Ones, tens, and hundreds. And my decimal points right here. And this is my tenths. There we go. Divide by 10, everything goes back one place value. So here's my 2, here's my 4, my decimal stays in that same spot, and here's my 3. So I ended up with 24 and 3/10. So let's double check our work. If I fill in this blank right here with 24 and 3/10 multiplied by 10, so this number's got to get larger because I'm multiplying it by 10. So that decimal would go back. I should get 243. All right. Questions about how I solved that at all? So in your work, you can tap right here where that red hashtag is, and you can go ahead and type in the answer, 24 and 3/10. Problem 1 is done. Congratulations.
Miss,
Oh, I heard someone, but I didn't. I'm not sure who it was.
hello.
Guys, make sure you're raising your hand. That's our Zoom expectation. So if you have a question or a comment, make sure you're doing that. Yes, Samira.
I solved the answer already and I got it correct.
Awesome job. So I'm glad you were able to use it to check your work. Very smart.
The second one.
Oh, okay. All right, well then, if we are ready to move on. Oh, Genesis, yes ma'am.
I can't split screen.
Okay, you'll just have to flip back and forth then. Keep your main screen on Zoom until I give you the answer at the end, and then go and fill it in, okay?
Okay.
All right, and Colin, I want you to keep checking your work, okay, bud? Awesome, thank you so much. Y'all are doing great. So this next one is probably one of the most confusing ones. It is the hardest. There's 2 more on the second slide that are like this. So this is the part that took almost every class like a couple of tries to get. So remember back when we first learned about going backwards in place value, we said going back one place was dividing by 10. And we also said that it's 1/10 of the value. So like if I have a 3 in the tens place and a 3 in the ones place, my value right here is 30, and this value is 3. So this 3 is 1/10 of 30. And whenever we solve it, I hope y'all can see that. And whenever we solve that, we just say divide by 10. Because remember that fractions are decimals, and we go back and forth between those. And fractions can also be used as division. I know that's a lot to think about. So again, it's okay if it's confusing right now. So it's okay. So whenever we see multiply by 1/10, it's asking us to do 1/10 of the value. So it's asking us to actually divide by 10. That's really what it's saying. So I'm going to cross this out because it's asking us to divide by 10. It wants to find 1/10 of the value. So basically taking this number and splitting it into 10 pieces, because that's what we do with fractions. It's a whole that's split into pieces. So the fraction 1/10 was saying, hey, split it into 10 pieces. We're only going to use one of them. So divide by 10. So whenever you look at a problem that says multiply by 1/10, we're dividing by 10. I know I keep repeating myself over and over and over, but it's really hard to understand. Okay, so I know some of you have said you've already tried to solve this one, so I want you to double check your work. So what we're going to do is the same thing. We need to find the inverse or do the opposite of what it's asking us to do here. So if it's asking us to divide by 10 to find 600, just like we did up here, can you write the equation that we would use? So I'm asking you to find this part right here for this problem. We would start with 600, and then what would we do? Type it in the chat for me. What equation are we going to use to solve this problem? Thanks, Colin. If you could make sure that you type out that whole equation for me, but I know what you meant this time, so you're good. Again, what equation are we using to find the answer to this problem? Yeah, Nellie, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to use that opposite operation. Yes, you got it, Mackenzie. That's it. Thanks, Cullen. Thank you, Leyland, for your response. Okay, so I know this is still a new one, and I told you this is the toughest one we're going to be solving. So it's okay if you're not getting it yet. Thanks, Amira and Haley and Genesis. All right, guys. So Mackenzie, I want you to get ready to kind of talk to me about what your thinking was. So we are trying to find blank divided by 10 equals 600. So how would we solve for that, Mackenzie? What would we need to do?
I'm sorry, but I don't fully know how to explain it, but we would grab the denominator and multiply it by 600, and then we'd get our answer.
All right, so I heard that you need to take 600 and multiply it by 10 to get our answer. Very good, Mackenzie. Thank you so much. Remember up here where we had blank times 10 equals 243. So we did the opposite or the inverse to figure that out. We said 243 divided by 10. We're doing the exact same thing here, except this one said divide by 10 to get to 600. So we did 600 times 10. So I want you to go ahead and in the chat, once you've solved 600 times 10, let me know what you get. Go ahead and do 600 times 10 right now. Remember, times 10 is going up one place value, that bunny hop up. Thanks, Fumi. Thanks, Maeve and Nellie and Mackenzie. Thanks, Amira and Cullen. I see some hands. I will address that momentarily. Gonna give people a little bit longer to solve 600 times 10. Remember, times 10 is going up one place value. Yes, Leyland, good job. Thanks, Genesis. I want to make sure I'm hearing from everybody. So even if you are completely confused right now, say, I'm completely confused. Let me know. Thanks, Haley. All right, Miss Leyland, can you tell me what did you get when you multiplied 600 times 10?
I got 6,000.
6,000. Wonderful job, Leyland. So over here, I'm going to kind of show what I think Leyland probably did for her work using our place value. So if we have 600, remember I can put it in that place value chart. Here's my ones, my tens, my hundreds. And I'm going to come up here and do my thousands. We know, we have already learned, times 10, whenever we move up one place value, remember how I bunny hopped up our place value chart over and over and over? Whenever I bunny hop up, what's happening, guys?
You're jumping up to a new place value.
I am jumping up to a new place value. Excellent job. And every time I do that, I'm multiplying the value by 10. We're going times 10. So whenever I'm multiplying by 10, remember my digits go up to that next place value. So the 6 would go from the hundreds place to the thousands place. This 0 would go from the tens place to the hundreds place, and this 0 from the ones place to the 10 place. And then I'm left with nothing in the ones. What do I do when I'm left with a blank in my place value chart? What do I have to put there?
0.
0.
Thank you, guys. Yes, I'm putting a 0. So now I have 6,000, just like Leyland told me. So I hope that visual and showing our work made it a little bit more clear about what happens when we're multiplying by 10 and going through our place value chart. Do I have questions so far?
Yes.
Any clarifying questions? If you could raise that blue hand. Nellie, I see your hand. Go ahead.
For this question, it says on the thing, it says, what times 1/10 equals 600?
You are absolutely right. Do you remember at the very beginning how we talked about 1/10 is also asking the same thing for us as dividing by 10? Do you remember that discussion?
Yeah, but you said that divided, so it got me kind of confused because
Mhm.
it's
You are
supposed to be the not 6,000. It's supposed to be the other one, but I don't want to give away the answer.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So it confused you when we started off with multiplying by 1/10, and then we changed it and said, oh, it's easier for my brain to think about that as dividing by 10. And then when we went to solve, you also had to do the inverse of that. So it was like a whole extra step. And I get that is very confusing.
Yeah.
So just remember that we weren't finding the inverse right here. When we said dividing by 10, that means the exact same thing as multiplying by 1/10. Because remember, if we find 1/10 of the value, we are taking that number and splitting it into 10 pieces, which is just like dividing by 10. So we weren't finding the inverse here. This was just helping our brain because we don't know how to multiply by fractions yet. So we changed it to a whole number. So when we went to find the inverse, we had to find the inverse of divide by 10. Does that make a little bit more sense or not really?
Not really.
Okay, so you keep thinking about it, and we're going to keep solving some more problems, and maybe by the end of this, it will start to make a little bit more sense. If not, we'll work through it together, okay?
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for asking that question. Yes, ma'am, Genesis. You don't have a question?
No.
Okay.
I do.
Oh, let's make sure we're raising that blue hand if we have a question. Thanks, Laylan. Go ahead.
So were we supposed to write down number 1? Because I didn't really get to write it down because I couldn't see.
Okay. Up here. Yep, that first one, we got 24 and 3/10. So yes, if you would like to have your work done and complete, I would write it down. All right, so we're finishing up this second one right here, and yes, our answer is 6,000. And again, we can think about that because if we plug it into the blank, go ahead and make sure you're on mute, please. If we plug it into the blank and then check our work, it makes sense. So if we say 6,000 divided by 10, which means our number needs to get smaller by one place value, equals 600. That works. So we can always check our work afterwards and make sure it makes sense. All right, this next one down here is much easier than one you just solved. So let's go ahead and work on this one. We have blank times 10 equals 1,630. So what is that inverse equation you are going to use to help us solve this? Go ahead and type it in the chat. What is that inverse equation? What are we going to use to help us solve this? Colin's already one step ahead of us. Great job, Colin. Thanks, Samira. That is the operation we're going to use. Go ahead and write out the whole thing. What, and then the operation, and then what are we, the other number. In Genesis, you are absolutely right. We're using our place value chart to help us, but what's the equation? Remember right here, we wrote out 600 times 10. That was our equation right here. So down here, what equation would you use? Remember, we're going to use the inverse to figure out what our blank is. Good job, guys. Thank you so much for responding in the chat. Y'all are doing great. I'm going to give people who haven't responded yet a couple more seconds to respond. Just an idea. What are you thinking? Thanks, Josiah. Again, it's okay if you're confused. Just tell me what you're thinking. Oh, some people are already skipping ahead and giving us the answers. Alrighty. Samira, would you read out loud what equation you came up with?
I came up with 1,630 divided by 10 equals what?
Wonderful. So she took this answer right here that we had and put it there at the beginning and then did the inverse, which is divide by 10, or sorry, multiply by 10. So she divided by 10. And now we're going to solve this to fill in our blank. And some people have already been giving me their answers. Thank you so much. So when we divide 1,630 by 10, what do we get? Remember, dividing by 10, we gotta back it up. Thanks, Fumi. Thanks, Genesis and Cullen. Yes, Mackenzie. Thanks, Samira. Thanks, Leyland. Give you a little bit longer to solve. All right. Thanks, Samira. Okay. So we took 1,630 and we had, thanks, Josiah, great job, and divided by 10. Josiah B, since you just put your answer in, would you go ahead and talk to us? One, what is the answer? And two, how did you do it?
Well, the answer that I got was 163. I got that because since you're dividing by 10, you're moving the 0 over behind the decimal point, so the 0 is no longer going to be there. So the 3 is taking the 0's place, the 6 is taking the 3's place, and the 1's taking the 6.
Excellent job. Pat on the back. That was great. So Josiah just talked us through that whole moving each digit back one place value in that place value chart. Wonderful. So we did end up with 163, just like he said. So if your answer did not have the digits 1, 6, 3, and a 0 in it, then you know you're off track. Whenever we are multiplying or dividing by 10, the digits stay in the same order. The only thing that changes is our decimal place. So the place value that those digits are in change. But 1, 6, 3, and 0 are always going to be touching and are always going to be in that order. All right. Leyland, I see your hand is raised. What question do you have, sweetie?
My question was, at the end of class, can we work on number 1 together?
Yes, we absolutely can. All right, so our answer for that one was 163. Go ahead and make sure you put that in your work. And I'm about to move to the second slide. Guys, you are already halfway done with your assignment for today. Wonderful job. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and exit off of my work and go to that next slide for us. The next couple should go a little bit faster as we're getting more familiar with it. There we go. So if you could go ahead and transition to your second slide as well. All right, here's another booger of a problem. This one's hard again. Does anybody remember what happens or what else can we do instead of multiplying by 1/10? What is the other operation we can do that would give me the same answer? Instead,
Divide.
okay, in the chat for me. Sorry, I wasn't specific. In the chat for me. Instead of multiplying by 1/10, what other thing could I do that's easier? Okay, so I'm getting a lot of people that are saying divide. Can you tell me by what? Divide by what? Thanks, Cullen. Thanks, Nellie. Thanks, Samira. Thanks, Genesis. Great. Thanks, Maeve. Thanks, Fumi. Okay, yes. So, who have I not heard from that Genesis, would you go ahead and take yourself off of mute? Instead of multiplying by 1/10, what could we do that's easier?
Divide by 10.
Yes, ma'am. We can divide by 10. Right on. So we are going to get rid of that and just say divide by 10. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, it might not make sense why yet, but we know that's what we need to do. We're going to divide by 10. Okay, so now our problem says blank divided by 10 equals 38 thousandths. So what is that equation we're going to write to help us solve this problem? Remember, we do the inverse. Thanks, Cullen. Remember, we're going to take our answer right here. That's going to start us off. And then I need to do the inverse or the opposite. Okay, when you are putting your answer in, notice that it should start with this number. It should start with 38 thousandths. That's what we're starting it with. I'm not asking for this one right now. I'm asking for what is the inverse that we are going to use to solve for this blank. Thanks, Samira. Thanks, Maeve. Fumi, okay, thank you. Go ahead and give us that equation if you can. Oh, yes, Nellie, I saw yours. Thank you. All right, Maeve, would you take yourself off of mute and tell us what equation did you come up with that was the inverse to help us solve for the blank?
The equation that I came up with is 38 thousandths divided by 10 equals.
Oh, yeah. Okay, by 10 equals blank. So this is what's tripping everybody up. And this is what tripped everybody up in the last class. Maeve, I'm sorry, I did not mean to call you out like that. So don't think that this is like me getting on you or anything, because every single person made this mistake, actually. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Don't worry, guys. It's allergy. Thank you. No corona here. So right now, this problem, remember we crossed multiply by 1/10 out, and we said it's easier for us to think about dividing by 10. So we are still finding the inverse of dividing by 10. We have to find the inverse, which would be multiplying by 10. I know it's confusing because y'all feel like we already found the inverse when we switch this out. This is multiplying by 1/10 is not the inverse of divide by 10. That is replacing it. They give us the same answer. If I multiplied something by 1/10 and then I also divided it by 10, I would get the exact same answer. It's not the inverse. We are just replacing it because it's easier for our brain to think about dividing by 10 instead of multiplying by 1/10, because right now we don't know how to multiply by fractions. So this is not the inverse of multiply by 1/10. This is just replacing it because it would give us the exact same answer. Okay? So when we find the inverse, remember we have to multiply by 10. I know it's confusing. It's totally confusing, and I get that. So we're going to keep working through it. Y'all are doing great. So now we're going to go ahead and take this number and we're going to multiply it by 10. So I'm going to solve this one just for time's sake, and I'll let y'all do the next one. It's a little bit easier, okay? So whenever we multiply by 10, remember all of our digits move up one place value. So I'm going to draw my place value chart over here. I have my 0, decimal, 0, 3, 8. This is my thousandths, my hundredths, tenths, and my ones. Each digit needs to get moved up one place because that's times 10. So this is a 0. My 3 is now in my 10th place. My 8 is now in my 100th place. So I just ended up with 38 hundredths. Notice the decimal moved one space back so that my number grew. It got larger. So 38 hundredths divided by 10 gives us 38 thousandths, because remember that number is going to make us, dividing by 10 makes our number smaller. So if you have not already, make sure you go ahead and put 38 hundredths in that answer plus little answer space. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that, and then I'm going to let y'all. Yes, Nellie, I see your hand. All right. I think most of you have probably already put that answer in. So now let's go ahead and do this one. Y'all are going to do this one, and then I'll do the bottom one for the most part, okay? So this is your last big piece. So give it your everything. What equation are we going to use to solve to find for this blank? Think about the inverse operation, think about the order, and then type it in the chat for me. Thank you, Cullen. Again, do not just tell me the opposite operation. I need the whole equation. Thank you, Haley. Okay, so some people are saying they're not quite sure what I'm asking for. Good job, Nellie. You got it now. Good job. All right, Haley. Haley, what equation did you come up with to help us solve?
I came up with the equation of 10
That's not what you said.
divided by 5.
That is not what you put in the chat, girl. Oh, yes, it is. Almost there. You're so
10
close.
divided by 5 equals.
So we know we need to divide. You're absolutely right, because dividing is the inverse of multiplication. We know this answer right here is going to give us the answer to go there. So now we have to make sure that we put our numbers in the correct order. I know it's hard for our brains because normally with division, we're like, oh, the biggest number always goes first. But that's so we get whole numbers. With this one, we're going to get a decimal. So we have to make sure this number goes first. So 5, and then we're going to divide by 10 instead of multiply by 10. So 5 divided by 10. Now remember, our decimal is right here, and dividing by 10 means we're going backwards because we got to back it up by 1 place value, because anything with a 10 is moving 1 place value. So take this 5, look, our decimal's right here. And on your sheet of paper, draw out your place value chart. Stop sending me answers because you haven't worked it out yet. Draw on your place value chart this 5 moving from the ones place backwards place in place value. And then what do you get? Thanks, Nellie. Thanks, Cullen. Guys, you can't add in extra digits. There's only 1 5 right there. You're not creating any other digits. You are only using the one that's right there. There you go, Samira. Again, there's no 1 right here. You only have a 5. You just move the decimal with that 5. There you go, Genesis. Good job. So the 5 is in the ones place right here. And we have to divide it by 10, which means it goes back 1 place value. So I draw my arrow for divide by 10 to take it back 1 place value, and my 5 ends up in the 10th place. It's right behind my decimal. So 5 divided by 10 gives me 5/10. So 5/10 times 10 equals 5. All right, I'm going to go ahead and solve that last one so that we can be done. And if you still have questions or want to work on something, stay on with me, okay? So blank times 1/10 equals 26. Well, we already know my brain doesn't know how to do this multiply by fractions really well. So I'm going to change it out. I'm not finding the inverse. This is going to give me the exact same answer. Dividing by 10 gives me the exact same answer. Okay? It's just easier for my brain to think about. So now I'm going to find the inverse to solve the problem. I need 26 multiply, because I'm finding the inverse, by 10 equals blank. All right, what's 26 times 10, guys? In the chat. 26 times 10. Y'all know this one. I got you, Colin. I saw you. Thanks, Nellie. And Mackenzie. And Haley. No, I forgot. You solve it. Work it out. Thanks, Genesis. 26 times 10. Remember, times 10 is going up one place value. Times 10, one place value up. Thanks, Samira. So if I have 26, again, we got to make sure we're writing it out, guys, so we don't make simple mistakes. That's my hundreds. Going up one place value for times 10. My 2's in my hundreds, my 6 is in my tens, and then I have to fill it in with a placeholder, a 0. And I end up with, there you go, Leyland. Say it, girl. What'd you end up with? Leyland, go ahead and say it. $260. Yeah, you got it. 260. 260 right there, because our decimal is back here behind our 1. So this is our decimal. All right, guys, go ahead and put that answer right there in your own work. And remember, I need Leyland and I need Jaquel, if he's still on here, and Rebecca. I sent all of y'all an email for a math. Please make sure it gets done today. All right, guys, if you do not need anything, you are free to go. I hope you have an awesome weekend. If you need me or want to talk to me or ask questions, you stay on, okay? Otherwise,
Bye.
Bye, Michelle. Have a weekend.
thank you, sweetheart. Bye, Genesis.
Bye.
Bye, Samira. All right, Miss Nellie. Yes, ma'am.
My mom